All right, here we go. Today we're talking about Wuthering Waves because it's been out for a while, and I think it's about time to discuss it, well, a little bit. How's it going? Is it good? Is it fun? Is it worth it? For any gacha game, these questions are probably the most important because if a game's not being updated, if it's being handled poorly, you're not going to have fun. And if the community perception is super low, I mean, you don't want to be playing a dead game, do you? You're not a loser, are you? But let's be honest here. You probably aren't a sweaty jerk who, judges the whole game based on like how many people are playing, and you probably don't really care like if you have the most meta units. Most people don't. There are some that do, but I'm going to tackle these gacha reviews when I do them from that perspective because I don't want to get too try hard about them. I toss money at them, but that's part of the reason why I don't want to be too try hard because I'm getting carried by that, and I also don't want to push even more money in trying to get some arbitrary numbers up. I really don't care about that. So let's get to the dang point here. People love to say that they want that, so let's see some support for that, huh? So what am I going to go over today? I'm going to go over Wuthering Waves state from release to now, how it feels, how I think it's going to go in the future, and why I think it's going to stay good. I'm going to briefly talk about why my opinion has a little bit of weight, not a ton, but a little bit. And we're going to talk about this game's story, its daily grind, how the combat is, some pain points, some things that could be polished, some critiques, and some positives. So let's get started right away. My gacha understanding is decent. I tend to try to play high quality gachas, and I can spot ones that are probably going to tank pretty quickly. Recently, I've been juggling a few of them because, I hate my own wallet. So I've been playing Genshin, I've been playing Wuthering Waves, I've been playing Punishing Grey Raven, and Zenless Zone Zero. These are all really good ones, in my opinion. They're ones with actual, gameplay to them, not just autoplay, because I despise that. I'm never going to waste my money on autoplay. A game I recently played, Astra Knights of Vita, or Veda, I don't remember how it's pronounced. I have a review of that on my channel. I didn't like it that much. It was something that felt kind of like Dragon's Crown, which is a side-scroller. SteamDB shows that that was around 10k players at release, so not a huge release, but I was on it, I was covering it, it was kind of fun, but I had a feeling that it was going to end up kind of dead. And it's now at about 1,000 at its, at its peak numbers for about a week, and it's slowly been dropping. It's a lot of fall off on that, and I can understand why. It was not super well balanced. It was really hard to make a lot of teams. It asked for a lot of money despite not offering the same quality as some other gacha. It was trying to play in the big leagues where it just didn't belong. Some games just have a higher quality, and that is something you need to take into account. I know some people get salty and angry about that, but if you want honesty, I'm going to be honest with it. I'm not going to, glaze up any gacha game that comes my way just because I'm having fun with it. Like, it just doesn't play out that way. Now, let's talk about the game we're actually here for. So Wuthering Waves, I think it's doing pretty well. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this. Now, it's not getting constant attention, right? There's not like a ton of stuff like it was on release right away. But it keeps putting out good content. The characters get increasingly more fun to play. And I think the world is improving. And the devs seem to be adding things that players will actually want and things that they're going to actually appreciate. So this is pretty good. Recent characters have been fluid, fun, and very versatile. Now this is a really good sign. Now, there's a bad part to this. That's that the standard characters kind of feel lackluster. Now, I think that's less of a purposeful design. Like, they weren't just like, oh, we want to make the standard characters suck, so you spend money necessarily. I think it's more that they weren't sure what they were really building at first. Now, my reason for saying this is that PGR, Punishing Grey Raven, which is another Kuro game, has, their early characters be very different than the later ones. Now, it used to be that in that game, positioning your character on your team was more important, and combat mechanics were kind of king. You weren't doing tons of damage and freezing the enemy in place. However, as time progressed, they became more about having these sort of time stop dodges and then just unloading on the enemy and going ham. Now, that created characters that are way more powerful than the early ones. I feel like Wuthering Waves is trying to find its footing in that regard, and I think they're starting to get it. They're making pretty versatile characters who have an obvious bias towards certain elements. So you're going to obviously have your elemental like teams so that they encourage you to play more things. But since we're so early on in the game, pretty much everyone is useful for anyone because they tend to have buffs that don't only apply to that element. So I think that's a pretty good design choice. Later on, this might spiral out of control if they make things a little too specific, or if they start making characters that are just way, 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 way better. That could be a little bit of a problem because the game's core combat mechanics kind of rely on, you know, dodging being important, on timing things being somewhat important. So if you take that out, you're going to end up with kind of an empty feeling game. So there's a lot of things to be wary of, but right now, from what I'm seeing, is there is effort being made in here, and you don't have to be sweaty to have fun, which is pretty good. Let's go over the story. So the beginning of the story was pretty boring. Let's just be clear about that. If you've done it, you know it. The world felt really lifeless. It was very gray, which was a complaint a lot of people had just for the literal look of the game to begin with. Having zones with a little bit of color and having them trying to rework things, I'm starting to see what they're going for. Now, at first, the bad guys were just kind of stock. We're a character who has amnesia, which is, you know, like, wow, never heard that plot point before, but whatever. You know, we have like an annoying companion that shows up, and everyone was like, oh no, they're just copying the Genshin thing. And then, you know, our waifu mascot with her blue beret wasn't as nice sounding as people liked. People are like, oh, she's got this weird whispery voice. And there was a lot of stuff that just kind of lacked punch. There were some quest lines that were changed that people weren't happy about. The adventure felt kind of scattered. It wasn't really like pulling people in. And so in short, it wasn't that great. And I think a lot of people kind of lost interest if they didn't like power through that point, right? But that's kind of typical. You're always going to have people fall out. But what I think is happening here is things are starting to pick up. They're starting to find their footing. The new zone we got recently has a lot more interesting things going on it with this whole frozen in time storyline and learning more about some of the powerful players in this world. It wasn't such a slog to complete the area since things were more directed. Now, side event stories are still pretty weak, as are side quests. I think that they just kind of lack a certain degree of punch, and there's just not a lot of fun to it. Especially since, you know, like I find myself actually wanting to skip some of them because they're just so generic. Like there's just this word salad problem, and that is something that a lot of these sorts of games do have, which I'm going to group these as like AAA gotcha games because I don't know what else to call them. They're the ones that Hoyo makes and Wuthering Waves falls under. Word salad just sucks. Like, I don't want to go through 20 pages of dialogue that says something I could say in a single paragraph. Now, there are decent moments in some of these side quests. Some of them have some cool things. Like there's some where there's like, you know, there's like a horror element in some, or like a question of like people's memories, like reverberating and lasting. And, you know, like the idea of moving on and these ghosts that are based on like echoes of people's memories. Like there's some cool things, but they're really few and far between. I've read a lot of the side quests, even though I said I skipped a few. And I can't say that I've ever found it to really be worth it enough to say, hey, you should definitely read these. Now, what I do like, though, is the main quests and the main events are pretty well done. They have some pretty strong starting animations. So we can see over here, I'm going to load one up right here on the screen so you can see some of the intro stuff. So you can get a little taste of that. Here we go. So you'll see here that there's a little bit more like animation work here. There's people that are voiced once this thing starts to get going. Unless I missed the whole... Oh, no, I didn't miss it, thankfully. Okay. So you can see they actually animate the characters. There's some voice work being done. This is kind of like the middling tier of animated events. Like, it's not like the big bombastic moments. But look, their mouths are well animated. There's a little bit of like energy behind what they're saying. Now, of course, you're not getting that all the time, but seeing events starting like this, it's pretty strong. And I'm starting to see some of the fun between his characters. They're starting to have a little bit more personality. We're relaxing with them. The theme behind this event is basically there's a festival. We pretty much saved this area. We did some pretty impressive things. Everyone's relaxing, and there's a cool little contained story here. Any of their contained stories are generally pretty good, as are the character-focused stories, which they should be because they want you to, pull on the character they're displaying. But still, those shorter stories have some decent writing behind them, and I think you'll actually have some fun with some of the twists and turns that show up. Let's talk now about the daily grind. So the daily grind is about what you'd expect. It's pretty quick. It's not like a huge waste of your time, and it respects the fact you're probably not going to be, spending all of your time on the game. Really, when you log in every day, you could spend about 2 minutes to do the daily quest, which is usually just kill something or talk to a person and skip their dialogue, and you'll have most of your daily activity done. Then it's just like spend some resource, which if you play gacha games, you know what that means. You go fight a boss, you go get some like money or whatever. And then once you've gone through that, which takes you maybe like 4 or 5 minutes, you could be done for the day pretty much. Now, there is extra content, like the typical gacha tower of multiple teams that want you to spend money on them, and the event stuff, which is all pretty fun. Side quests and new explorable areas, again, they have some fun moments. Now, I will say there are some things that are a little bit less fun, like if you have to grind out some ingredients, you might have a bit of a nuisance with that. Upgrading your characters tends to involve needing a lot of materials from overworld enemies. Like, let's say, like a ring. And you know how gachas work. There's like a gray quality one, purple one, a gold one, and you need a ton of each to upgrade to the next. Now, the annoying thing is you could spend like an hour or two just chasing after those specific enemies, thankfully tracking them pretty easily because there is an in-game tracker that helps you kind of find out where they are. But you won't have that many resources, or even if you do, you're going to need a lot of money. I mean, I've played a lot of gachas, and this one I keep hitting 0 on my money as I'm trying to upgrade characters. Now, that's pretty standard as you're starting out, but it is kind of hard to build a stockpile. I do need events for that, and that's kind of good. I mean, it is keeping me wanting to do things, so that is pretty fun. Bosses are not too hard unless you're going for the specifically challenging ones, and then you actually have some decent combat. So that's kind of cool, and they don't force you to do it, so you're not going to be punished if you're not like the most Twitch-focused, gameplay, hyper speed guy out there. Now, there's also some cool roguelike ideas they've had, which I've not seen done as well in a gacha game before, where basically you go into a mode as a single character. You have, any of your characters or some trial ones they offer you, and you modify that character with roguelike things that actually change your abilities. Some of them are just basic power-ups, but others actually change the way your kit kind of works. Like, for example, you might start in the middle of your combo and have something new added on into it. And that can greatly change how you perceive the character. It could also teach you some lessons, so that's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. It doesn't take too long either, so its timing is really good, and it gives you good rewards. I'm seeing these good ideas, some of their own unique ideas, and then some things which are just parroted from stuff like Genshin. Now, on the bad side, the game can be a little bit tedious when there are no events. You're just kind of logging in, being like, yep, I did my daily. All right, see ya. And farming resources is kind of annoying, like I said before, because it's so expensive to level up characters. I've just, I put a pretty penny into this game. I bought extra, money with some of that, the reward you get for like, oh, you didn't get like, you're pulling on characters and you get a bunch of junk rewards. Well, some of that you can exchange for, like mats. And part of that I've exchanged for max money a few times, and like, well, the max amount they'll offer me, and I still hit 0. So it is pretty pricey. But moving through this world does feel really good. Now, there are some characters that have some benefits, like any character that is fusion based or fire, let's just call it what it is. They get like a little summon they can use, which lets them use a motorcycle, which is way faster. I kind of wish there was like a item to do that like with instead, and they'll probably include something like that eventually. Combat in this game. Combat is immaculate, and it keeps getting better, I find. Now, there are some nuisances with certain characters who require you to do like a combo. And the reason why the combos are an issue is because, well, this is a game where they want you to dodge certain moves or do certain things at certain times, and that can interrupt your combo and kind of like ruin your flow. Now, this makes me eat an attack every once in a while if I'm fighting stuff that's kind of inconsequential. Sometimes timing a dodge or timing a parry is a little harder than it seems. I've been clipped by stuff, and I'm not the best at always getting that, but I'm sure eventually I'll get it down, or characters will become so powerful that it won't matter, but I hope that latter one doesn't happen. Basically, I could just get good. Now, I do think some characters feel a bit boring in combat because, well, others feel like goddesses of war, or gods of war, if you're talking about the few male characters that are out that are decent. I do worry about power creep in the future. I wonder how they're going to manage the combat and keep it exciting while making all the characters feel like decent. If they start releasing like super hyper powerful characters that are just way better than all the others, that can get kind of annoying. And I don't want all the characters from the past to just kind of be useless. I don't mind the standard bannered ones kind of sucking right now, because they're kind of, they were early on, they were probably designed a bit differently, but all the new ones so far have been pretty good, while not being so grossly overpowered that I feel like, it's useless to use anything else. Now, builds aren't super solved yet. Now, people are still kind of in the discussion stages of things, and they're not as well like meted out, which is kind of nice. Now, right now, I think characters seem so versatile only because we don't have their proper complements. For example, a thunder buff character doesn't have a thunder attacker that's as good as you would hope to really complete that team. We just got an ice character, the one with the paintbrush you might have seen me using a little bit in this, who greatly buffs ice characters and has some basic attack buffs and such, but we don't have like a really strong like ice attacker, like an S rank ice attacker that'll really pair with her yet. So because we lack that, a lot of characters are just kind of working with whatever's new because they're stronger, they have a little bit more going for them, and therefore they work okay. We'll see how things pair out, but right now, the fact that I can just have a fun time, not really worry about meta teams, pull on the S rank characters that seem cool and do well, is a good thing. Now, some pain points. There are some things that are kind of weak in the game. I'm going to open up something right now just to show a little bit of some event play that was going on, so you can see how they manage some of that, which I think is kind of an interesting little thing. They have like a nice little UI interface thing here, and you have to build up money, and it's like a lot of it's based on this. You make like you hang out with some of your friends, you power them up by doing little things, you get quick little dialogues. They're not really that in depth, but it's like a cool little mini game that's actually connected to the world. I think this is kind of cute. It's in a condensed area. You meet with your friends, although they don't voice act the chat with all of them, which is a shame, but just keep that in mind. I'll let that run in the back as we're talking about this. Now, some pain points. There is definitely less quality in this game overall than a Hoyo game. And for some people, you're probably thinking to yourself, ugh, like, why are you talking about that? Is that really necessary? Some people get really upset about that, but we're going to be honest here. This doesn't mean you can't like the game more. I really enjoy it. And sometimes I find myself being like, man, Genshin feels kind of weak because of this, like in some ways. I like both games, though. I play both. I like the characters in both. I'm having fun with both, so I really don't have a dog in that fight. And if you want to argue about which one's better, like, you can go get angry somewhere else. But Wuthering Waves just isn't as cinematic, and you can see the quality just isn't as high overall. And I don't mean like graphically, because graphically I think the characters look a lot better. But I mean, when you look at the world, there's a lot of things that you can kind of see some of the shortcuts. You can kind of see their cinematics aren't necessarily as well placed or done as often. There isn't as much voice work. There is no like housing system like there is in Genshin. There's a lot of like, you can't change your gliders yet. There's a lot of things that eventually might come to this game, but they're still like kind of putting things together, and it's still, it's just not at the same quality because the studio behind it isn't raking in the dough quite the same way. But I think they are doing really well with this game. I think this is a massive step up from Punishing Grey Raven, and I think that's really cool. They're also really good at addressing things. Now, as an example of this, they recently put out, like just now with this patch, a relic which allows you to shoot with any character. It basically is kind of like 2B's little floating gun companion, the pod, where you can summon this little robot thing out and it shoots. Now, you can't do that while you're actually fighting, at least not reliably. It does like basically no damage, and it won't let you basic attack while it's out. But what it means is you're not interrupting the flow of your gameplay to do open world things. Like, let's say there's like a floating orb you're supposed to shoot. Well, now you have this little thing that you can summon, and boom, you don't have to swap characters out, which was really annoying whenever it happened. If you ever played Genshin, you know what it's like when it was like, oh, you have to use a fire archer character right now because there's a stupid torch, and it's like, okay, let me go into my let me go into my team, let me swap them out, let me pick another character just to do this one puzzle and swap back, because it's just like, it's a nuisance. In this, it's like, you know what? Yeah, fine. Here's a relic. You don't have to keep swapping into a character with a gun, because not everyone's going to have an overworld team where you have a character with a gun. So now it's like, oh, now I have an easy solution. It's a nice thing. It makes perfect sense. The fact that they're listening and paying attention to things like that is an extremely good sign for the future. I think there are some weak points, though. So let's talk a little bit about the polish of this game. So the world itself could definitely use more polish. We're still early on, so I'm going to cut it some slack. But we definitely need more enemy variety. We need some more interesting side quests, because a lot of them are just word salad. Some translation work is pretty shoddy. And you can tell that very easily when you're reading certain things. It can be hard to kind of like engage with some of the game due to like the resource grind. It's a little hefty. I'm not sure if that's going to change later, but right now it is a little rough. Despite playing pretty much every single day and doing at least the daily stuff, I'm still struggling for resources, and I've grinded out enemies for mats, and they evaporate quick. It means it's also hard to test out characters and really get a feel for like who's good or not. I wish things were a little cheaper for some of the other characters, or you could like, I don't know, catch them up a little faster. Although saying that, it is like day 2 of this patch, and I've already maxed out the new character except for her weapon and her skills, which, is part of the reason why I'm probably poor right now. But still, it's a lot that I've been saving up for so long, and it's just all pretty much gone that quick. Now, I do like some choices they have, though. So, for example, if you get an S-rank character, you can say you build up a resource as you pull, which will let you get like a free second constellation of that character if you want to spend that resource on it. And that's a pretty cool thing. So if there's characters you really like, there's ways to build up some like free extra pulls on them. Animations on the main characters are also really great. But I do think some side characters have some pretty rough animations. I mean, if you really look at some of them, it's like, ooh boy, you're going to be kind of shocked. Now, I'm showing off this gameplay right now just so you can see they did do something different with this event, and it's kind of cool to kind of keep you engaged and change things up a little bit. I'm not going to make you suffer through all of it. A lot of the side quests that are going on with your friends, they're cute. You interact a little bit with some of the characters you've met, but obviously the polish isn't as high as something like Genshin's leeway festivals. And I do worry about what's going to happen in events like this in the future when we have a much bigger cast, because it seems like they included everybody in this one. Like, you can eventually meet all the companions and have them hang out. But in the future, when we have bigger and bigger and bigger amounts of characters, like, what's going to happen? I mean, and then again, even then, this event doesn't have some of the characters that you might know. Like, there's some that just don't show up, like notably a lot of the male characters. Now that might be because we haven't really met them as much in the story. But it is a little bit weird feeling, and I wonder how that's going to go. A little bit of a side tangent there, but anyways. One other critique I have for polish is a lot of the puzzles in the world just kind of feel like thrown at locations. They don't really feel like well constructed or like well placed. I kind of get that, but it just feels like someone just kind of like splattered the wall with a bunch of puzzles, and we're like, okay, yep, that's good. Now, I am shocked that a lot of the things I've gotten done, like a lot of the quests I've actually completed. I'm pretty, I'm pretty amazed with that. Here, I'm going to show off some of the particularly bad mouth flapping on this Grand Mind PC, which looks kind of like a PS2 texture trick. But at least the main characters don't tend to look like that. Yeah. So let's keep talking here. Just my final thoughts here, because I want to kind of get this out and kind of share with you guys what I'm thinking. Oh, my video is acting up a little bit here. There we go. I don't know why I was doing that. Now, even though I've kind of played this casually, I have completed a lot of the main, like, you know, the quest like things. I kind of just knocked them all out really like pretty hard one day, and I was all caught up, and I was like, wow, I can't believe like I actually got that all done. Now, I don't think this is a bad thing. Again, I prefer a game where, like, if it's a gacha, I don't want to be playing all day, and I think that that is ultimately decent. Like, I can explore my own pace, I can get everything done, and it's not like a huge rush. For some people, that's an issue. For me, I kind of like it. I still feel like there's a good amount of content. I feel like there's a reason to come on every day, but it's not a horrible drag. And when events come in, they're actually fun. Like, I'm having fun with this event because it's a good change of pace. It's not an event where I'm running around or killing a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of that in the game, but it's nice to see them trying different things. I think with all the quality of life they're doing, I think with the adaptation to the player base, I think this game's going to do well, especially since we're getting a free 5-star soon, which is a nice way for them to show off, you know, something a little bit different that people might not be used to if they play certain other games. I also think Kuro has a good idea with its collabs usually. In Punishing Gray Raven, they've done a few collabs with different games. I'm hoping they do a collab with their own game. Like, I hope we get a Punishing Gray Raven character, which will probably be Alpha or Lucia, but I hope we do get them eventually, because I think that'd be really, really cool to see in this kind of game. I also hope they do some other collabs and keep that kind of energy going, because that can be a big draw for games like this, and it can be a nice little bolster to get people looking at it if like one of their favorite characters comes into it and looks really cool. I think that's one thing they have over Hoyo, which they should exploit. I hope they do something like that, because Hoyo doesn't seem to be very into doing collabs that same way. I mean, yeah, they had, you know, Aloy in Genshin, and I'm sure they've had like some other people like here and there, but I don't feel like they do it the same way. And Kuro did like a really nice job with their collab characters. They're not like often the strongest, but it can be really cool to have things like that going in. So I hope they listen to community feedback. I hope they keep adding new like areas with different ideas. I think these more condensed stories serve them well. And I think the game is really in a great spot. If you were looking to pick this up, if you're like, man, I don't know if I have enough time for another gacha, is this one like so huge and like vast? Like, right now is a great time to get into it, because it's still early on its release. It's not like you're going to be like swarmed with too much stuff to do. It'll take you some time, but you know, you'll get through it. And I think there's a fun time here. There's genuinely a good time. I think they're putting like effort where it needs to go. I think this gacha really is going to keep doing well. I don't know what the numbers are like on it right now, but things seem to be like, people seem to be liking it, and I have to parrot that sentiment. It's pretty fun. I'm seeing good changes. The game has like a good diversity of characters. So let's just hope they keep doing some fun things. They keep getting creative, add some more like different echoes to use. I think that's one thing they need to work on, because right now it's like, oh, well, why would I ever use any other echo other than like the 4-star ones that do like the big damage? There's some cool ideas that are with some other monsters you can summon, but they don't tend to seem that good. Maybe though, with more practice, I'd find out that they were, but with resources being so expensive, I just haven't been able to really do that. But anyways, that's it for right now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope if you've been looking to play Wuthering Waves, or if you're kind of waiting for more reviews on it, maybe this will convince you to give it another look. If not, if you're like, wow, I don't like what I'm seeing, then that's fine too. That's why I'm showing what I have right now. Combat's still great. I like that they're diversifying things. Now, if they stop adding big areas or whatever, that would kind of suck. But you know, they just added a whole huge area. They've just done a few combat events. Now we're getting something that's a little more chill. It's a good balance, and they're making the characters fun. You know, there's like, I just think it's really good. I'll be doing some more gotcha reviews. Recently, I've been playing Zenless Zone Zero a bunch. I'm going to talk about that one as to why at first I really didn't like it, and now I'm really starting to enjoy it. So look forward to that in the future. I'm not going to only do gotcha games, but I do enjoy them. I mean, I clearly have an aesthetic. I realize I really do like anime games, but I have, you know, I have other things that I enjoy playing, but you know, those things I have a lot of content for because I play them daily. So I just want to do a little update on this since I was just doing the content today. Hope you guys all have a good time. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and comment if you want to. I'm willing to add people on Discord if they want to chat too. I'm trying to figure out this whole thing where I want to stand. I can't update as much as I always want, but yeah, I'm rambling. All right, see you guys. Have a nice night. Love ya.